Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. So this is a session for research methodology on IGA research skills. My name is Zohaina. So I will share with you the key points on research methodology, especially for science and technology field. Okay, I hope everybody is fine, especially during this movement control order. Okay, and I hope that you can really focus on the slides. As we will go along with the definition and also the important steps that you need to know in research methodology. Right, this is a little bit about me. As you can see that I've joined UITM at that time was ITM in 1992. So meaning that I have been with UITM for 28 years. Okay, so this is just to inspire you. Okay. Right. Now, the purpose of this session is to understand research terminology and also explore different type of research methods. So as you can see from the figure, um, in research methodology, we have many terms like qualitative, quantitative, statistics, survey, SPSS, and so on. So we will explore this and you can see what are the importance or what are the direction that you will take for your research. Okay, what is research? Right? Now, from the definition here, you can see that it is actually what you are doing when you don't know what you are doing. Okay, because meaning that you are searching and repeating the searching. So you search and also you research. So let's look at these three case study. Okay, so which one of these we can classify as research? The first one, Mr. X prepared a paper on computer usage in secondary schools after reviewing literature on the subject available in his university library and call it a piece of research. The second case, Mr. Y says that he has researched and completed a document which gives information about the age of his students, their SPM results, their parents' income, and distance of the schools from the district office. And the third case is Mr. Z participated in a workshop on curriculum development and prepared what he calls a research report on the curriculum for building technicians. And he did this through a literature survey on the subject and by discussing with the participants of the workshop. Okay, so from these three case studies, which one do you think can be classified as research? We will go back to these slides, okay, in a few minutes. So if we look at these other definitions here, research is a movement from the known to the unknown. It is actually a voyage of discovery. And some people also say that research as a systematized effort to gain a new knowledge. Research is a scientific and systematic search for pertinent information on a specific topic. And Martin Shuttleworth said that in the broader sense of the word, the definition of research includes any gathering of data, information, and facts for the advancement of knowledge. So you can see here that as a summary, research is something that we use in order to get new knowledge. Okay, there are two other definitions here from Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary. A studious inquiry or examination, especially investigation or experimentation aimed at the discovery and interpretation of facts, revision of accepted theories or laws in the light of new facts, or practical application of such new or revised theories or laws. And another one is research is a process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic or issue. Okay, it consists of 3 steps: pose a question, collect data to answer the question, and present an answer to the question. So now let us consider the following case. At the same time, you still remember the three cases that you have looked at the slide before. Now, let's say we have this following case. There is a general manager of a car producing company. He was concerned with the complaints received from the car users that the car they produce have some problems with rating sound at the dashboard and the rear passenger seat after a few thousand kilometers of driving. So he obtained information from the company workers to identify the various factors influencing the problem. He then formulated the problem and generated guesses, which in this case we call as hypothesis. And he constructed a checklist and obtained requisite information from a representative sample of cars. He then analyzed the data, interpreted the results based on his hypothesis, and reached conclusions. So, in the example, you can see that the researcher went through a sequence of steps which were in order and thus systematic. Okay, he began with collecting data, state the problem statement, do the hypothesis, and then analysis. So you can see that the researcher did not just jump at the conclusions, but used a scientific method of inquiry in reaching at conclusions. So there are two important characteristics here, which is it is systematic, and secondary, it follows a scientific method of inquiry. So if we go back to the three cases few slides ago, okay, you can see that none of the three cases can be classified as research because it didn't follow a systematic procedure, and also it does not give any new knowledge to the problem. Okay, so I hope you can get the different you can see the differences between the three cases before this and the example just now. Right. So from this case study and examples, we can summarize that hunting for fact or truth about a subject can be used as a definition of research, and also research we can simplify as organized scientific investigation to solve problems, test hypotheses, develop or invent new products. Right? Now, so these are the steps that we can use in doing research. Normally, we start with a question or problem, because when we have question or problem, then only we will find the solution. And then once we have the question and problem, we need aim. Okay, what is our objective in order to solve the problem? And we will follow a specific plan of procedure. Okay, we can also divide the problem into sub-problems so that it makes us more, it's easier for us to find the solution. And guided by specific problem, question or hypothesis, and accept certain critical assumptions. In order to do this, we need to collect and interpret some data, and then this will be repeated until we achieve the solution. Okay, now high quality research normally have this characteristic. Okay, it is based on the work of others. It means that we have some benchmark, or we did some literature review to see what other people are doing. And high quality research also means that it can be replicated or duplicated. So if other person would like to improve our research, it can do so. It is generalizable to other settings. It is based on some logical rationale and tied to theory. So we have to have some fundamental theory behind our research. it generates new questions or is cyclical in nature, and it is also a political activity that should be undertaken for the betterment of society. So these are the characteristics of a high quality research. So what is bad research? Okay, so basically bad research is whatever opposite that we have discussed. Okay, we are looking for something where it is simply is not to be found. Okay, there's no solution for that. Plagiarizing other people's work, this is also a bad research. Falsifying data to prove a point, that means we manipulate the data in order to get the results, and misrepresenting information and misleading the participants. So why do we need research? Okay, basically I think for the postgraduate students, the aim is to get your PhDs, masters. Even for final year undergraduate students, there are also some element of research in order for them to complete their bachelor degree. We also need research to provide solutions to complex problems, to investigate laws of nature, to make new discoveries, to develop new products, to save costs. For example, if we have a process which involve higher cost, so we can improve it by reduce some of the process to save costs, to improve our life and also human desires. Now, in order to classify research, we can look at three points here. We can classify research by purpose, by method, and also by design. So if we look at classifying research by purpose, okay, it is basically can be further categorized by two kind of research. It is applied or development research, which is research undertaken to solve practical problems. And we have also basic research, which is experimental, and theoretical work undertaken to acquire new knowledge and theory. Okay, so meaning that when we classify research by purpose, is it for basic research, which is mostly theoretical or knowledge expansion, or is it applied research, which is more practical, to solve practical problems and also to improve the betterment of humans. Now, if we compare these two, applied and basic research has no immediate application. Okay, it is basically tied to a fundamental theory. But applied research is a research which has immediate application. Okay. However, this differentiation are quite ambiguous because almost all basic research eventually results in some worthwhile application in the long range, meaning that basic research may be in the immediately there is no application, but after that, okay, it will eventually result some application. So we normally start with basic research, then we improve it to become an applied research. Okay, another classification of research is by methods. So this is where we characterize research by the method in collecting and analyzing data. We can classify research as historical, descriptive, correlational, and experimental. So in the next slide, we will elaborate each of these classification. Alright, for historical research, okay, the purpose of this historical research is to arrive at conclusions concerning trends, causes, or effects of past occurrences. So this may help in explaining present events and also anticipating future events. So meaning that historical research is something that we would like to see the outcome for the present condition and also the future condition. The data are not gathered by administering instruments to individuals, but the data are collected from original documents or by interviewing the eyewitness. So we can collect data by interviewing the first hand story. This is the primary source of information. And if we do not have the primary sources, we can collect from other than the eyewitness. So this is a secondary sources. And then the data that we have collected are subjected to scientific analysis to assess its authenticity and also accuracy. Okay, now these are one of example of historical research. We have two researchers here, Nancy Burton and Lyle Jones, examine trends in achievement levels of African American versus white children. So in this study, they examine high school graduation rates between these two ethnic groups, okay, African American and white, who were born before 1913, between 1913 and 1922, and also between 1923 and 1932, and also etc. So they also examine a variety of historical indicators in more recent groups of African American and white children. So one of their conclusions is that differences in achievement between these groups are decreasing. So that means their conclusion is that based on the historical data, 1930, 1922 and so on, they can see that there are a difference between the rate of achievement. So these are example of historical research. Then the second research the way we collect data is descriptive research. Now these studies deal with collecting data and testing hypotheses or answering questions concerning the current status of the subject of study. And it deals with the question, what is of a situation? So normally it's only concerned with determining the current practices, status or features of situation. So it means that we are describing the present situation. Data collection is either done through asking questions from individuals in the situation, using questionnaires or interviews, or also by observation. One example here, there are one research interviewed 58 elderly individuals from 68 to 87 years using a structured interview to investigate the variables that affect emotional abuse among the elderly. So as a result, they found 9 variables are common to elderly abuse, including lack of affection, threats of violence, and also a confinement. Okay, so that means they are describing the present situation. Okay, next we have correlational studies. When we talk about descriptive and historical research, these normally provide a picture of events that are currently happening or have occurred in the past. Okay, sometimes researchers also want to go beyond this description and begin discussing the relationship that certain events might have to another. That means that's what we call as correlationals. The most likely type of research to answer the relationship among variables or event is called correlational research. So this is when we want to investigate the relationship between more than one variables. And this study also aims at determining the degree of relationship between two or more quantifiable variables. And secondly, we can use this relationship to make predictions. Okay, for example, a high value of relationship, however, does not signify a cause and effect relationship, which must be verified through an experimental study. So meaning that this will be a basis before we go for experimental studies. An example of correlational research in a study by Vaughan, 1989, he examined the relationship between temperament and attachment behavior in infants, the correlation among different types of attachment behaviors, and how securely attached the infants were to their mothers, and the infant's general temperament were examined. Okay, so the researchers found that an infant's temperament does not predict how securely attached the child is to his or her mother. So these are the relationship that they have found. Okay, the next one is experimental research. When we talk about correlational research just now, this can help establish the presence of a relationship among variables, but not give us any reason to believe that variables are causally related to one another. Okay, meaning that if you want to, we need something to verify. Okay, this correlational research. So how does one find out if the characteristic or behaviors or events are related in such a way that the relationship is a causal one? Okay, that means that we need to know that this is a cause of the effect to another. So there are two types of research can answer this question. One is quasi-experimental research, and the second one is experimental research. So I will explain this in the next slides. For experimental research, this is where participants are randomly assigned to groups based on some selected criterion, often called treatment variable. And then we have quasi-experimental research is when we have participants are pre-assigned to groups based on some characteristic or quality such as differences in gender, race, age, neighborhood, etc. Okay, so meaning that we have one group which is randomly assigned, the other group is pre-assigned. So these group assignments have already taken place before the experiment begins, and the researcher has no control as to what the people will belong to each group. So the primary characteristic of experimental research is manipulation of at least one variables and control over the other relevant variables so as to measure its effect on one or more dependent variables. And the variable which is manipulated is also called an independent variables, a treatment, an experimental variables, or the cause. So some of the examples of an independent variables could be temperature, pressure, chemical concentration, type of material, and also conductivity. So meaning that when we have experimental research, we will have one variables called we will have one type of variables called independent variables, and the other one is dependent variables. As you can see here, dependent variables change or vary as a result of the independent variable, Then we have independent variables, which does not change with the effect of anything. And the third one is moderating variables. For experimental research, you always have two or more groups for comparison on the dependent variables, and this is the only type of research which can establish truly the cause and effect relations. Okay, for example, if we have a researcher who want to study the effect of two methods of instruction on the achievement of students in a course of one semester in applied mechanics. Okay, meaning that the researcher would like to apply two methods and would like to see which group of students will achieve higher grades. So 60 students in the class are divided randomly into two groups of 30 each. Okay, and the groups receive the specified treatment for an equal amount of time during the semester. And the participants are measured for their performance on the achievement test before and after the program, so as to measure the gain. So these two groups, each group receive specified treatment, and then they are tested to see which one will have higher performance. So in this case, which one is the independent variable and which one is the dependent variable? So the dependent variable is the method of instruction, and the dependent variable is the achievement of student, because the achievement of students are dependent, okay, or depends on the instructions. Different instructions will produce different results, which means that different achievement. Okay, the difference in the gain on achievement between the two groups will show the effect of the methods of instruction. Okay, now the other classification that we can do for research is by design. Okay, when we talk about this, there are popular category as quantitative methods and qualitative methods, and the other one is mixed mode. Okay, so as you can see here, for quantitative methods, it is more when we focus on the quantity, okay, on the numerical factor. For example, here you can see that the dialogue here is only 1 in 30 take the free ice cream. Interesting. So meaning that this is more on the quantity. But when we talk about qualitative methods, this is more subjective. For example, we can see from the figure, we talk about feeling. Okay, what did you feel when you saw the free ice cream? Excited, a little scared. So this is more subjective. While the mixed mode is normally when we mix quantitative and also qualitative. So for quantitative research, it normally deals with quantitative data. We always use statistical analysis, and data collection are used using instruments such as questionnaire and experimental equipment. Hypotheses are normally developed and tested statistically, and research findings usually conclusive. Okay, because it is more specific, or we use objective. And then for the sample, it is usually large and representative of the population. We can use probability sampling techniques such as simple random sampling, stratified sampling, systematic sampling, and also cluster sampling. And some of the method of quantitative research, such as survey, experiment, secondary data, and also observation that is quantified in terms of, for example, frequency, variances, and so on. And for qualitative research, it is normally a research used for exploratory studies. Okay, the main purpose is to gain insight and understanding on issues that are not well conceptualized. It involves qualitative responses and is normally used research questions, not hypothesis. For the sampling size of qualitative research is usually small and not necessarily representative of the population. Normally use non-probability sampling techniques such as quota sampling, convenience sampling, chain sampling, and also theoretical sampling. And the methods of qualitative research such as observation, where we can see total observation or participant observation, face-to-face interviews, focus group interviews, and also historical data or document analysis. So if we compare these two, for qualitative, it is more naturalistic, focus on the understanding, descriptive, flexible methods, inductive, and also richly descriptive. While for quantitative, it's more statistical, focus on predicting or controlling, hypothesis testing, predetermined methods, deductive, and also precise numerical. So these are the differences or comparison between qualitative and also quantitative. Now, if you look at the mixed methods, as I mentioned, this is where when we mix qualitative and also quantitative, it says here that procedure for collecting, analyzing, and mixing both quantitative and qualitative data in a single study to understand a research problem. So this method is actually a good design to use if the researcher would like to build on the strength of both qualitative and also quantitative data. Now, let's look at what are the steps in conducting research. After we have learned about the type of research, the category, and also the how you collect data and so on. So, what are the steps that you should take in conducting research? So, if we look at the research cycle, normally we always start with identifying what are research area, and then we design the research study, we carry out the research, analyze the results, and then we publish the results. Okay, so these are the cycles that involved in a research. Okay, you should begin with a good research topic. Okay, that will give values or interest, and especially if you like to apply for grants, so a good title will give some significance. However, this title sometimes we also call as working title, so it can be changed or improved until you get the results. And then you identify the research area. How to identify this? You can see what are the interests by reading the literature sources such as thesis, dissertation, articles in either conference or journals. You can also use the web to search the area of interest, what are the current issues, and also talk about the problems and possible topics with researchers and experts. Or maybe you would like to have some informal interviews with professionals in the industry. So if we look at the steps in identifying research area, it begins with the initial idea, which is quite broad, and then you narrow it down through your thinking and reading, and then you have the final focus of research. So your research should be focused and specific to a particular subtopic. Now after that, you can select and define this problem. Now this is the most difficult and important step, where it involves identifying and stating the problem in specific terms, and then you need also to identify what are the variables that involved in the problem, and you need to define the variables, and then generate tentative guesses, hypotheses about the relation of the variables, or in other words, the solution of the problem, and then you evaluate the problem for its research ability. So these are the most difficult step. Once you know what the area, you need to select and also define the problem. So in order to do this, you need to review the literature related to the problem to know what other researchers have done and also discovered, and to identify the possible methodology for conducting the research. So literature review is a very important step in order for you to understand the researches being done to that problem, and also for you to select your methodology to conduct the research. And after that, you need to describe the methodology of the research. You state the purpose of the study and define the problem clearly. So in this step, you need to identify the method of the research, the subject of the study, the method just now, are you using qualitative, quantitative, and so on. What are the subjects that involved in your study? Select an adequate representative sample of subjects, and then you need to select a valid and reliable instrument for measuring the variables in the problem, and then select the research design and describing the procedure to be employed for conducting the research study. So these are the steps that you need to do in order to define the problem and to decide the research methodology that involved in your research. So sometimes we talk about methods. So is it similar to methodology? Okay. So methodology is actually the way that you group together your research techniques to make a coherent picture. That means you, from the methods you have described, you group them together, make it into a research design. So this will give you research methodology. So after that, the next step is collect data. So this involves conducting the study as per the design procedure. That means how to manipulate the experimental variables in the case of an experimental method, or maybe you find the method to how to administer the instruments for measuring variables, and or gathering information through observation. It also involves tabulating the data thus collected for the purpose of analysis. So after you have identified your methodology, you can starting collecting data. And after that, this is where you analyze and interpreting results. The data are summarized, in other words, analyzed, or to provide information for testing the hypothesis. And in order to test the hypothesis, you can use appropriate statistical methods of analysis. You can perform this analysis either manually or by using some computer programming. depending on the demands of the problem, and also what are the possibilities available to you. And after completing the analysis, results are tied together or summarized, and your results are interpreted in the light of the hypothesis and on the research problem, meaning that you have to um, look back whether the results achieved is what is it really solved the problem that you have stated before. Okay, so these are then discussed in relation to the existing body of knowledge, consistencies and inconsistencies with the results of other research studies, and then the conclusion are drawn. So you need to compare your results with previous researchers and verify or justify, and then you can make a conclusion. Yeah? So this is followed by writing the research report. Okay, now is there a difference in conducting research or in the research activities among the various fields of technologies or disciplines? Okay, in science and technology there are many disciplines, so is there any differences? So for example, here we have engineering, architecture, business and economics, law, medicine, mathematics, pure science. So these are the various fields of technologies or disciplines. And for example, if we take only one discipline, even in engineering, there are many areas ranging from electrical, civil, chemical, mechanical and also mechatronics. So which type of research does engineering fall into? Okay, remember that we have identified 4 types of research: historical, descriptive, correlation and also experimental. So which one normally associated with engineering? So from here we can see that actually research in engineering can belong to all the 4 types of research. Okay, but the one that most engineering research fall into is either the activities normally are to develop new algorithms, techniques, methodologies, confirmation of newly proposed algorithms, design of new products, comparing a number of different methodologies, and also stability analysis on newly proposed algorithms. So these are most common activities in engineering research. There are also some application of proposed algorithms in novel application, study of certain aspect of dynamics of plants, of systems, survey of some engineering aspect, and market study of certain engineering products. Another activities such as study on effect of environmental factors on a particular product or design, improving the design of existing products. We can also extend algorithms developed by others to a wider or variety of application, and also test new techniques on benchmark problems in which earlier research has not done. So from these activities, we can see that mostly engineering disciplines are on descriptive research and correlational research. There are some on experimental research and very little on historical research. And if we look at differences between research activities in the engineering disciplines and others, for engineering research, they are more formulative in nature. A lot is based on mathematics, okay, and experiments normally conducted on machines rather than humans or animals. Data to be collected differ significantly. Hypotheses are normally arrived based on mathematical proof, okay, not just educated guesses. Experiment can be done within a shorter period of time, and the outputs are more tangible, such as software, new machine or component, or even mathematical equation. And this research activity do not differ much in different regions of the world. So some tips on conducting research in engineering. After you have selected and defined your research problem, you may conduct your research along the following lines. Get as many papers as possible in that research field. You have to read and understand even those papers written by non-research readers, as most researchers hide their pitfalls. And do not read a little part of the paper, read everything, okay, and understand the mathematical steps. And if you cannot understand the step of the paper, you can always refer to the reference part and find the earlier papers listed as the references and understand the papers. And it's always good to get papers written by many different authors to get a grip on the subject and also algorithms. And if you still cannot understand that, then you can get the mathematics books and try to understand the basic mathematical concepts. So once you have understood the algorithm, you now need to write a program to simulate the algorithm. Okay, compare the simulation from your algorithm with the original papers and make intelligent analysis. And you should jot down anything that affect the system, such as which parameters affect the results, and etc. And from here also you can spot the limitations of the algorithms when you compare your simulation with the previous researchers. You can see that if there is any room for improvement, how can you improve it, and what's the difficulty of trying to formulate this more specific algorithm, and also is it practical enough. And after that you can try writing the algorithm on more challenging problems, okay, for example non-linear systems, large and complex problem, to see if your algorithm still work. If it doesn't, then find ways on how to improve on it, and if it does, then you should do a number of analysis. And after that you can write a research report or paper from this research. Okay, so I guess that's all for this session, right? I would like to wish everybody the best of luck, and I hope you will be success in your studies, and thank you very much. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.